Hey there, everyone. It's Rob Ryder on Wednesday, September 11th, 2013. Let's pray for peace today. Here's an interesting thing to get started. If you go to Google Translate and put in the word Roman, choosing Latin as what you're going to translate it into, it looks like it's Roman. But if you highlight it, you can click for others. And when you do, you see such things as U.S. Medieval, American, and Rome. So Romans, they could be talking about Americans when they talk about Romans. Could be talking about U.S. America, United States of America. So, and if you put Rome over here instead, one of your choices will be London. Just kind of interesting how they play with words. Not really what the video's about. This is what the video's about. For some time now, we've been trying to figure out how you correctly put a petition into the Pope. People have said, well, you just mail it to him. I had read, well, you're supposed to send it to the dicastery. But I hadn't found it in the church documentation, and people had gone to the diocese. They really didn't want to tell you how to do it. Nobody seemed to know how to get a hold of Pope to petition him. Well, it turns out that it's through this court called the Apostolic Signature. It's one of the three courts in the Roman Curia that make up the supreme courts of the Holy See or the Christian nation. So just like England had four superior courts, the Court of Chancery, Court of Common Pleas, the Court of Exchequer, and the King's Bench, in the jurisdiction of the church, they only have three of them instead. And there's one called the Apostolic Signature, which is basically the top court of the Holy See. So in February 9th, 2011, Pope Benedict XVI had an address before papal address, the Apostolic Signature, the court, justice, a minimum requirement, and at the same time an exception of charity. So I got lots to read, so I'm not going to be reading everything, but you can easily find this yourself. It's the papal address to the Apostolic Signature by Pope Benedict, and it was on February 9th, 2011. This is my first opportunity to meet the Supreme Tribunal of the Apostolic Signatura after the proclamation of the Lex Propria, proper law, which I signed the 21st of June 2008. So this Lex Propria is the law that this Apostolic Tribunal works under. And so far I've only been able to find it in Latin. I haven't found an English version, only in Latin. Indeed, this tribunal's area of responsibility is not limited to the highest exercise of the judicial function, but also includes the duty in the realm of executive governance, it's the executive power, to exercise vigilance over correct administration of justice in the community of the church, which is in the body of Christ, all baptized Christians. And there's an Apostolic Constitution, Pastor Bonus, Lex Propria, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's kind of hard to find all these things, but I'm working my way through it. As well as the constant practice of communicating with the bishop moderators of the diocesan and interdiocesan tribunals who have direct responsibility institutionally for the administration of justice. So there are these bishop moderators of the diocesan and interdiocesan tribunals. Now, as you can see, we're using lowercase diocesan and so forth, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a Catholic diocese. What does diocesan stand for? Right? It's a common noun they're using. This is the coordinated and patient task which aims above all to provide for the faithful the correct, rapid, and efficient administration of justice. Well, if you're a baptized Christian, you're one of the faithful. So we're looking for correct, rapid, efficient administration of justice. It's through the Apostolic Signatura. Consequently, there is a need to ensure in full respect for canon law, the presence of local ecclesiastic tribunals, their pastoral character, and their correct and prompt functioning. Which means we shouldn't have to go to Rome, they should already be local. I repeat that it is a grave obligation to bring the church's institutional activity in her tribunals ever closer to the faithful. We're supposed to put this, make it more available to us. The Apostolic Signatura carries out certain activities in order to ensure that ecclesiastic tribunals are present in the territory concerned, and that their ministry is in line with the rote requirements of speed and simplicity to which the faithful are entitled in the treatment of their cases. According to its competence, it encourages the establishment of interdiocesan tribunals. The necessary dispensations from procedural law, where the exercise of justice requires in a specific case the relaxatio legis, relax the law, basically, in order to achieve the purpose intended by the law. And this was laid out in this thing called the lex propria. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a second. And it has something to do with bishop moderators, which I'm not really sure what that is yet. This Supreme Tribunal is likewise committed to another sensitive area of administration of justice, which was entrusted to it by the servant of God, Pope Paul VI. The administration of justice. The Signatura adjudicates controversies which have arisen from acts of ecclesiastic administrative power. And so these courts we're going into now, they're ecclesiastic courts, man. That dude up there is sitting there as a, ecclesiastic judge, actually more like an auditor, as we'll see, which is an ecclesiastic office. And so they adjudicate controversies which has arisen from acts of ecclesiastic administrative power. If you want to appeal the judge's decision, you could take it to this court. They have and have been brought to it by means of recourses legitimately proposed against individual administrative acts, whether issued by the dicasteries of the Roman Curia or approved by them. So again, this Roman Curia could be American departments, I think is one of the choices it could be. U.S. departments. I don't know. Anyways, if everything is run from Rome, then they're all under Rome's control. And if we have an appeal to something that's happening in something that's under Rome's control, the Vatican, we're supposed to take it to the Apostolic Signatura. This serves primary importance, the provision of the instruments of justice, from the peaceful settlement of disputes to their judicial treatment and resolution, offers a place of dialogue and the restoration of communion in the church. One of the things I think that's happened, because this is one of the three superior courts, the other one is the Sacred Penitentiary, which is like a confessional court. I think that somehow we've been excommunicated from the church because we signed a piece of paper or we did something, and it's been an excommunication. And that is supposed to be dealt with directly with the Pope through this sacred penitentiary. So we're not in communion with the church. Now, we'll find out how that goes, but again, even so, if you have a complaint, you take it to the Apostolic Signatura. If it is indeed true that the injustice should be confronted, first of all, with the spiritual weapons of prayer, charity, forgiveness, and penance, nothing less, it cannot be excluded in certain cases that's appropriate and necessary for it to be addressed by procedural means. Whenever someone feels injured by a decree, there not be a contention between the person and author of the decree. So, we're supposed to be able to go and say, hey, I don't agree with this. But that care be taken by common counsel to find an equitable solution between them, perhaps through the use of respected persons in mediation, and study so that the controversy may be avoided or solved by some suitable means. Right, they're going to pick up the phone and make a phone call. To this end, initiatives and norms are also encouraged which aim at establishing offices or councils whose duty according to the norms to be established is to seek and suggest equitable solutions. Alright, so these offices or councils are supposed to be already established, and it's their duty to seek and suggest equitable solutions. In other cases, that is, when it's impossible to settle the controversy peacefully, the carrying out of the contentious administrative process will bring about a judicial resolution of the dispute. We take them the complaint, they make a phone call. If that doesn't work, then they'll do the contentious administrative process. In this case, too, the activity of the Supreme Tribunal aims to reconstitute ecclesial communion, namely to reestablish an objective order in conformity with the good of the Church. Only this communion, reestablished and justified through the motivation of judicial decision, can lead to genuine peace and harmony within the ecclesial structure. The demanding reestablishment of justice is destined to reconstruct just and orderly relations among the faithful and between them and ecclesiastical authority. And again, the Constitution of the United States is an ecclesiastic ordinance. Constitutions are ecclesiastic ordinances. The reestablished awareness, Indeed, the inner peace and willing collaboration of the faithful in the Church's mission derive from the reestablished awareness that they are acting in full accord with their vocation. Right? We're supposed to go there and tell them we're supposed to be conforming the temporal order to the will of the Lord. Once we're aware of that, now we need to find out where to take the complaint. It looks like it's the Apostolic Signatura. Justice which the Church pursues through contentious administrative process can be considered as a beginning, minimal requirement, and at the same time an exception of charity, at once indispensable and yet insufficient if it is compared with the charity on which the Church lives. It's the least they can do for you. Nevertheless, the pilgrim people of God on earth will be unable to realize this identity as a community of love unless it takes into consideration the demands of justice. Right? So that's what old Benedict said, Pope Benedict, on February 9th, 2011. He's really talking up this court. Let's find out a little more about it. So the other two tribunals, the Roman Curia, are the Apostolic Penitentiary and the Roman Rota. The Roman Rota acts as the ordinary judicial tribunal for appeals from sentences of tribunals of the first and second instance. So it's an appeals court. But the Apostolic Signatura, it considers appeals from judicial sentences of judges of the Roman Rota and other judges who render judicial sentences. That's the first thing. Second, the Apostolic Signatura acts as the supreme tribunal of administrative justice in the Church, executive justice. So it considers appeals from judicial sentences of judges of the Roman Rota. So if somebody's already been sentenced and they're sitting in jail, you could take it to the Apostolic Signatura. It entertains petitions brought by private persons against the decision of administrative authorities. The Apostolic Signatura functions as a kind of Department of Justice in the Church. It exercises vigilance over the general administrative justice in the Church. Rather, the third area of its competence concerns the efficient operation of tribunals throughout the universal Church. Now, this isn't the Roman Catholic Church, this is the universal Catholic Church. If you agree with the Apostles' Creed and you were baptized with proper form and matter, you're in that church. And it's under the Supreme Pontiff. Not under the Bishop of Rome, under the Supreme Pontiff. A different hat. Okay, so they have this. So this Apostolic Signatura has this office of referendary. It's a referee. Receive petitions from private citizens to the emperor. Right? So the referendary received the petitions from private citizens to the emperor. So the referendary would receive our petitions to the Pope. The referendary reviewed the petition, reported to the sovereign, and then communicated the sovereign's response to the petitioner. How are we supposed to do our petition? Through the office of referendary, which is part of the Apostolic Signatura. The referendary received petitions submitted to the royal pontiff, classified and studied the petition, submitted the recommendation to the pontiff, and then communicated the pontiff's decision to the petitioner. Can't be any clearer than that. Throughout the 12th and 13th centuries, the referendary functioned as a notary in the Apostolic Chancery. In response to the referendary's recommendation, Pope Innocent III would grant the petition with the formula such as, let it be done as requested, let it be done, and we dispense it. So let it be written, so let it be done. Officially recognized the office of referendary as part of the Roman Curia. So this office of referendary is part of the Roman Curia. It doesn't necessarily have to be in Rome. Office of referendary, yada yada yada. The referendarius did not yet constitute a distinct organ of the Roman Curia. The pontiff granted the body to sign his name to certain petitions. This body became known as the Signatura of Grace and Commissions. So we're going through the history of how we got to this Apostolic Signatura now. The Signatura granted petitions by the concession of the pontiff's grace in non-judicial matters and by his commission in judicial matters. Starting in the 16th century, the distinction between grace and commission led to the division between Signatura Grace and the Signatura Justice. And justice is by commission, and the grace is by in non-judicial matters. The body of referendaries, referendary can mean notary, can also mean referee. I think it's really probably more correct to say it's referee. The Tridentine reorganization retained the division of the Signatura of Grace and Signatura Justice and clarified their distinct competences. The system of single jurisdiction, which was also known as one of extrajudicial appeal, permitted a private party to appeal to the ordinary judicial form. We've been looking for the ordinary judicial form from an injustice that did not result from a judicial sentence. And you're not getting a judicial sentence when you go to these courts. They're administrative officers. They're not judges. So this would be like for foreclosure, right? Where they say it's two private parties going into because they have a dispute. Well, what you should do in that case is when you get a chance to talk, say, I don't owe the petition, I don't owe the plaintiff anything, any money of any kind whatsoever, so help me God. Because they never took an oath to what they said, you just did. Now they have to bring in their proof under seal that they have a contract with you. And you never had a contract with the plaintiff. The dude doesn't exist. It's a fictitious entity. Okay, so they restored the Signatura of Justice. That was after Napoleon. And then stipulated Apostolic Signatura could also consider claims of reinstatement against the decision of other Roman dicasteries. Somehow I think we've been excommunicated. We need to be reinstated. And Roman dicasteries, translated from Latin to English, is U.S. departments. This is the 1917, I think they're talking about Code of Canon Law here. Recognize judicial parameters of the Apostolic Signatura, appeal from judicial sentences to the Roman Rota to the Pax was permitted. However, with the exception of reinstatement, petitions against extrajudicial act of an ecclesiastic authority was limited to the appropriate Roman congregation. So anything other than reinstatement, under the 1917 Code of Canon Law, you had to go to the proper congregation. Vatican II marked the beginning of a new era for canon law consistent with the theological meaning of communion. Principle 7 of the revision of the new Code of Canon Law expressed a general concern for the protection of the rights of private individuals through a process of administrative recourse. The so-called second section of the Signatura exercises competence over a recourse from a decision of a congregation of the Roman Curia. Again, we don't necessarily need to be talking about the Vatican City here. This could be courts here in America. The recourse must allege a violation of law in deciding or proceeding. Well, we know they're not following the procedures. All you need to do is look at whatever your civil procedures are, or criminal procedures for that matter. You can find all sorts of errors and omissions, and they won't fix them. They never do. So you point out the section they're not following, and you take it to whoever the referendary is, the referee. Looks like it's going to be the chancellor, and show him and we'll show him the errors in the procedures. The recourse must allege violation of law in deciding the proceeding. Consistent with the theology of Vatican II, the Apostolic Signatura serves as the tribunal of the highest level of ecclesial governance, facilitating the vindication of rights and interest of private parties in both judicial and administrative matters. Highest court in the world. The Apostolic Signatura does not consist of a completely autonomous judicial and administrative tribunals. Does not consist of completely autonomous judicial and administrative tribunals. So they must be people hiding in other places. The present general structure of the Apostolic Signatura was first established in, I don't remember REU is, in 1968. Pope Paul VI also issued special norms. The special norms contemplate a college of 12 cardinals appointed by the Pope to judge the case before the Apostolic Signatura. In addition to the prefect, the office of Apostolic Signatura includes a secretary. So the secretary is going to be important. Promoter of justice, that would be like a prosecutor. Other personnel contemplated in the special norms are a chancellor, archivist, so forth and so on. Most of the petitions for remedy brought to the Apostolic Signatura are recourses against single administrative acts, as often as it is disputed as to whether the impugned act may have violated some law in deciding or proceeding. So we got all sorts of administrative acts, right? An executive order is an administrative act. And so, if you think about all the acts that have been passed since 9/11, maybe we can take those to them. A single administrative act, right? Just find the act and take it to them. Or your foreclosure, as far as I'm concerned, is an administrative act. A single administrative act may have violated a particular provision of canonical procedure. For example, the religious superior who dismisses a member of the community with no financial provision likely violated, yada yada yada. Second, the violation of an individual right may involve positive, natural, and or divine law. Right? So if it violates positive or natural and or divine law, it can be appealed. Third, the vindication of individual rights at the Apostolic Signatura must be balanced by a proper consideration of the common good. The meaning of the common good in the Catholic tradition is not merely the good of the community. In contrast to the excessive focus on individual or community, the Apostolic Signatura attempts to render decisions in accordance with the principles respecting personal dignity, participation, membership, and the mission of the Church. The procedure for appeal to the Apostolic Signatura is specified in the special norms and consists of 3 phases. The first phase involves the introduction of the appeal by the petitioner and the preliminary investigation by the Secretary of the Apostolic Signatura. The second phase involves notice to the parties. The third phase involves meeting of the College of Judges. The judges hear from the defendant, bond, and appeals from judicial sentences and from the promoter of justice and petitions against decrees of the Roman congregation. Pastor Bonus permits the Apostolic Signatura to award financial damages. The function of the Apostolic Signatura is to render justice according to canon law in a specific case. So they don't set precedents with this. Each one is an individual case. And really, that's what a court of chancery is. We're talking about the court of chancery of the church here. Because the court of chancery in England would have been the court of equity, and equity means justice, and it's where you would go to appeal a judicial decision from a law court that's only going by the law that says he who holds the title is the owner, and it doesn't really care how he got the title as long as he has a hold of it. All right, so if they come and steal your title from you, well, they have the title, they're the owner, and you would have to go appeal that to the court of chancery in England to say, hey, they may have the title, but they got it by fraud. All right, so it's a pretty powerful thing. So the procedure for appeal, so first of all, right, we need to figure out, A, who these people are here in America, and if we can get a copy of the procedures in English, this lex propria. But there's a secretary and there's a chancellor, and we'll see that there's more to be said on that. So what else is there about this? This highest church court, which spurns modern rules of evidence, can hand down the final ruling on people's marriages, of course. It functions as an appeal court for decisions of the Rota Romana, which specializes in annulments. The judgment of the Signatura are upheld by the Austrian Concordant. This is the Vatican Supreme Court. The Apostolic Signatura is the court of last instance, therefore handles appeals against decisions of the Rota Romana, which is the Vatican's ordinary appeals court. Below these come the bishops' tribunals, which are almost exclusively devoted to marriage annulment. So the bishops' tribunals are almost exclusively for marriage only. That's why they don't seem to have any idea about this other stuff. They're just there to handle the marriage annulments. The justices of all these ecclesiastical courts still wear the medieval legal hat that identifies John of Nepomuk, patron saint of lawyers. However, the judge of the higher courts, the Apostolic Signatura and the Roman Rota, are clothed in red rather than in black. So, if you see them wearing black, right, they're below the ones who wear red. And the ones that we see when we go into court are wearing black. And who is this John of Nepomuk? National saint of Czech Republic, who was drowned in the river at the behest of the king of the Romans and the king of Bohemia. Imagine that. So who is this referendary? Is the English form of rendering a number of administrative positions of various rank in chanceries and other official organizations. The office of referendarius, referee, existed in the Byzantine court. During the Frankish Empire of the Merovingian period, the official who would later be known as the chancellor was termed as the referendarius. So at the diocese, they have a guy called a chancellor. Now in the Grand Rapids Diocese, when you get to him, it says finance and administration. So that would be finance and executive. And then it goes over and it says CFO, Chief Financial Officer, / Chancellor. And the Chancellor would be for the executive. So it could just as easily have said CFO / CEO. The Chancellor. Right? This is the office. I believe that the Chancellor is the one that you take your petition to that is going to the Pope, and you still address it to the Pope, but it would go through the Chancellor. In the Papal Curia Romana Court, the office of referee, Chancellor, their duty was to receive all petitions directed to the Holy See, to report on them to the Pope, and to tender his advice. The treatment and decision varied according to the nature of the question. If a favor was concerned, it might be either granted or refused. If some dispute, the Pope decided whether it should be referred to a judge. The referendary was entrusted with all arrangements for these papal decisions, which they had to prepare for the Pope's signature. From these referendary developed the court of the Signatura. So the court of the Signatura sounds like all the chancellors. Referendary means referee. In Germany, referendary is an individual undergoing a period of practical training in the legal profession, aspires teaching during the practical period of teacher training. Law graduates are employed and paid by a court where he or she works as a law clerk. So this is in the secular side, right? So there are referees also that are actually law clerks. The referendar works as a law clerk for a civil court judge and for the local office of the public prosecutor. But that ain't the one we're going to. During the Merovingian period in the Frankish Empire, the official letter as chancellor is called referendarius. So I think it's the chancellor. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, okay. This was translated from, I found it in Latin, translated in English, and it doesn't read so well, but there are just a few points I wanted to point out. With the creation of the congregation and the growing competence of the rota and the chamber, which they did not need special committees on the Pope, the functions of the mark fell and became first a court of law, also for civil cases within the papal states. The present powers of the Supreme Tribunal of the Apostolic Signatura are set out in the Apostolic Constitution, Pastor Bonus of 28 June 1988. We'll look at those in a minute. And its lex. With regards to strictly judicial authority, the Apostolic Signatura adjudicates complaints of nullity, petitions for reestablishment against judgments of the rota. See, I think we need to be reestablished. Concerning the status of person, we need to change our status. Causes against the auditors, those are those judges we see sitting there now, of the Roman rota. Which contentious administrative court adjudicates, which have arisen from an act of ecclesiastic administrative power. Right, so that's the problem. There was an ecclesiastic administrative act of power from a black robe priest that we don't agree with, brought before it legitimately, and in these cases, in addition to the judgment of legality, it can also judge, in the applicant so requests, the reparation of damages caused through the unlawful act. You can ask for damages. It proceeds according to the lex propria, which the Supreme Pontiff has signed on June 21st, 2008. So this is the procedure for the Apostolic Signatura. Is called lex propria, signed on June 21st, 2008, which was published in the Apostolic Letter Motu Proprio, dates And you can find it here in this AAS 100 2008, page 513 to 538. I found it, but only in the Latin version. So I got to ask somebody how I get it in English. So that was the one court. Now they have another one called the Romana Rota. It's one of the 3 tribunals instituted by the Constitution. To it are assigned all contentious cases that must come before the Holy See and require a judicial investigation with proof, except the so-called major cases. And the major cases would be things like excommunication. And excommunication is through the sacred penitentiary. That's what a major case is. The Rota, therefore, tries in the first instance of cases, including criminal cases, which the Pope either motu proprio or at request of confessing parties calls up for his own judgment and commits to the Rota. Moreover, it is a court of appeal for cases already tried judicially in episcopal tribunals of the first instance. Is that like Episcopal as in the Anglican Church, Episcopal Church? Because back in the early 1900s, the bishop here in West Michigan was sitting as the state's commissioner of prisons. That wasn't the correct title, but when he was a bishop, he was sitting as a state officer over the frickin' over the prisons. The Rota is composed of the auditors. So we have, they call them auditors. Each auditor chooses an assistant who must be a doctor of canon law. That would be like a law clerk. So that's who the chancellor could be, because we saw on the other page, they talk about the referendary being a law clerk of canon law, basically. The auditors give their decisions either through 3 of their members or in plenia, but sometimes the Pope may, in a particular case, ordain otherwise. A case may also be submitted to the Rota not for a decision, but for an opinion. We could send something to them on opinion. Hey, is this lawful? The auditor who prepares the report is called the Relator. May employ a prosecutor or an advocate whose selection must be confirmed. The complaint and the defense must be in writing or printed. The complaint and the defense must be in writing or printed. I don't think you can type it. I think it needs to be in writing or printed. And again, there's on the diocese website, in the tribunal here in Grand Rapids, there is one guy who's called the auditor. What do they do? Arrange the suit, hear the evidence of the litigants, hence the term auditor, and then make a report to the Pope, right? They're going to hear the evidence. So what's that black robe priest doing up there? Right, he's hearing the evidence. The auditor was empowered to decide, but his judgment had to be confirmed by the Pope. Now, when you see lowercase pope, that doesn't necessarily mean the royal pontiff. In fact, pontiff doesn't necessarily mean the Bishop of Rome, and neither does Pope. A pontiff is a high priest of a religion. And apparently in the Old Testament it was used numerous times to identify the high priest of the Jewish religion. So, lowercase pontiff, lowercase pope, we're not necessarily talking the Bishop of Rome. Okay, and then they were entrusted with cases relating to benefices. Right, so they're administering our estates. But they have a guy called the Auditor General for civil suits in the papal dominions. So, if you go online, and even in the state there's an Auditor General, you know, it could have been that's who we took our complaints to, but I'm going to do everything through the church first. I'm not going to try anything in the civil authority. I'm going to try to take it to the church. So who is the Auditor General? These are things we're going to find out by asking not necessarily at the diocese. I'm going to go find some really smart Jesuits and see what they can tell us, because they're part of the administrative, the executive branch of the church. Okay, fix the number of auditors at 12. Civil appeals in the papal dominions were also entrusted to the tribunals, the auditors of the sacred places. Right, so where are of the sacred palace, right? So where is the sacred palace? That would be tribunals of the auditors at the diocese. I think that's the palace. With the institution of the Roman congregations, the jurisdiction of the rota in ecclesiastic matters was greatly curtailed, and it became, generally speaking, a civil tribunal enjoying a worldwide reputation. Leo entrusted to the auditors part of the process of beatification and canonization. Okay, so this is the other one, and this is the Roman rota, what they call the sacred Romana rota, sacra, and they have auditors. Let's see if we can find out about an auditor. Designation of certain officials in the Roman Curia, whose duty it is to hear and examine cases submitted to the Pope. It cannot, however, give a decision unless it receive delegated jurisdiction. There are therefore not judges in the strict sense of the term. I really think that's what we're dealing with in the mirror image in a courtroom. These officials have been part of the Roman Curia since the Middle Ages. And they have an auditor general who originally had very extended powers, such as judging appeals against the decisions of bishops, auditors, because that's who they used to be, were bishops. He could also take cognizance of cases of criminal and mixed jurisdiction in the states of the church. Auditors of the Roman rota were originally chaplains of the Pope. By decrees, they were constituted into a tribunal. Important cases laid before the Holy See by sovereigns and nations were referred to the rota for judgment, and its decisions became precedents for all other tribunals. Sounds like a Supreme Court. It also served as a Supreme Court for civil cases in the states of the church. It represents how, at present, the auditors of the rota are restricted practically to giving deliberate opinions. That's all we ever get is an opinion in processes of beatification, canonization, and deciding questions of precedence between ecclesiastic dignitaries. They are generally also attached as consultors to various Roman congregations. Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church, an auditor is a person, male or female, delegated to gather the evidence, drawing up the case for presentation to the judge, and so could be called an instructing judge. So it sounds like you could give a complaint to an auditor. It has to be written. Or printed. Or printed. Unless a judge determines otherwise, auditor decides what evidence is to be collected and the manner of its collection. Right? And that's what they're doing in the court. What's going to be accepted for the trial. The auditor has been described as the impartial court official that collects all necessary documents for the case. The auditor may be chosen from the tribunal judges. Right? So, auditors come from the tribunal judges. The person chosen by the bishop should be conspicuous for their good conduct, prudence, and learning. So it doesn't need to be a bishop. It could be appointed by the bishop. This is interesting. Whenever the ordinary receives information with at least a semblance of truth about a punishable offense, he is to investigate the circumstances either personally or through some other suitable person, who then has the same power as the auditor. So the auditor has the power of the ordinary, because he can appoint somebody else who then has the same power as the auditor. But who has the power of the auditor? Or what power does the auditor have? Whenever the ordinary. He is the ordinary, and it's the ordinary that has judicial, executive, legislative powers, and we're trying to use their executive powers. So whenever the ordinary receives information with at least a semblance of truth about a punishable offense, he is to investigate the circumstances either personally or through some other suitable person who then has the same power as an auditor. You take your complaint to the auditor. Church of England, auditor is a judge who is a member of both the Arches Court of Canterbury and the Chancery Court of York. Here's another definition. One who prepares the acts of a trial in ecclesiastic procedure. He summons and presents witnesses, prepares judicial documents, and summarizes acts. Sounds like a judge. He never pronounces final judgment unless specifically authorized to do so. He is appointed by the bishop. And the bishop, again, this is lowercase bishop. This isn't necessarily a Catholic bishop. Common noun bishop. What's an audit? General definition of an audit is an evaluation of a person, organization, system, process, enterprise, project, or product. Systematic and independent examination of data, statements, or records. Well, that's what they're supposed to be doing. Historically, the word auditing had been derived from the Latin word which means to hear, according to Dixie. Traditionally, auditing can be understood as an examination of account records undertaken with a view to establish whether they completely reflect the transition correctly for the related purpose. So when you're in a foreclosure, that's what we're looking at. They're looking at the transactions and the accounts and the records, right, to make sure that it's been done correctly. And they're not making proper determinations, so we need to appeal their decision. Now, the state of Michigan has an Office of Auditor General and constitutional authority. The Auditor General shall conduct post-audits of financial transactions and accounts of the state, lowercase state, in all branches, departments, offices, boards, commissions, and agencies. Right? Sounds like a guy you could take your complaint to. This is in the state. Right? So if you think the answer is in the civil law, then go to the Office of the Auditor General and take him your complaint against your foreclosure. And this is just some definitions on auditor. But under the rules of civil procedure in many states, the term master is used to describe the person formerly known as auditor. Persons formally, their proper title is auditor. So you could ask the judge, are you an auditor? Because they may say, no, I'm a master. Right? Well, master is the same thing. Master at the bench. Because back in when I was reading Blackstone, they talked about sergeants at law and masters at the bench. And when you think about the sergeants at law, they were supposed to, represent you in court. I just wonder when they say masters at the bench, if they mean that's who the judicial authorities were that were standing up there. Not the people that were supposed to be representing you or presenting you, but they were the ones sitting in, as the judge. So real quick, the Roman Curia, strictly speaking, the assembles of departments and ministries which the sovereign pontiff in the government of the universal church. Assist the sovereign pontiff in the government of the universal church. And, right, it's got a number of tribunals, which we talked about. And the first one is the Sacred Penitentiary. And the Office of the Penitentiary assumed greater importance when the reservation of cases to the Pope, such as excommunication. Right? So if we've somehow been excommunicated because maybe we swore to the Constitution of the United States of America, which was written by Freemasons, which have no faith, right? They're devil worshippers. Technically, we were excommunicated. Now, we could say it was a mistake. We didn't know that's what the case was, and that's fine. But until we do that, right, the presumption is we're excommunicated. Possibility. Region of the penitentiary. Okay, so what do we have? After the regent comes a theologian who has long been usual to select from the Society of Jesus. That would be a Jesuit. And they got archivist. Right, so this is just about the offices. This is the interesting thing. The Cardinal Penitentiary, so first of all, where are we at? We're talking about at St. Mary Major, the penitentiaries are Dominicans, at Loreto, Jesuits. So we have all these offices where these people meet. St. John Lateran, St. Peter's, it was formerly filled by Jesuits. The Cardinal Penitentiary assists the Pope at the hour of death, reciting the customary prayers for the dying. It is he also who at the beginning of the Jubilee offers to the Pope the golden hammer to give the first 3 knocks at the holy door, Porta Santa, of St. Peter's, which door is open only during the Holy Year or Year of Jubilee. I wonder what that holy door is all about. That's interesting. Okay, after they, so this is after you go there and confess, striking lightly upon the head, traditional rod. The competency of the penitentiary was confined to matters of the internal jurisdiction. These are things to do within the church, and if you've been excommunicated, that's definitely within the church. The power of dispensing destitute or needy persons from public matrimonial impediments. There's something to do with the marriage that didn't really go the way it's supposed to. Civil marriage, and there's something that we may have signed when we, for instance, if you were to register for the draft, if you took an oath to the United States Constitution and the Constitution of a particular state, you're serving 2 masters. There's all sorts of things. The tribunal also deals with conscience questions submitted to the judgment of the Holy See. Okay, I'm almost out of time because I can only do these so long, but here's Canon 1445, what it adjudicates. This is the Apostolic Signatura. Back to this, because this is the one we're going to deal with. Complaints of nullity, petitions for reinstatement. The tribunal deals with conflicts which have arisen out of acts of ecclesiastic administrative power and are brought before it legitimately. To watch over and correct administration of justice and discipline advocates or procurators if necessary. That means discipline attorneys. These attorneys are taking an oath. If you really read the oath, it says that they're going to act fairly and justly. Well, they're not doing that. So we can take it to them because they're going to administrate justice through this court. Also ensures that justice in the church is correctly administered. It handles petitions for reinstatement in cases concerning the status of persons. The Signatura also adjudicates other administrative controversies referred to it by the Roman Pontiff, has a responsibility to exercise vigilance over the correct administration of justice, and if needed, to censure advocates and procurators, attorneys. Petitions to deal with petitions presented to the Apostolic See for obtaining the commission of a case, yada yada yada. So, anyways, these are just little things I found that have to do with this court, and still going through it myself to fully understand it, but I wanted to get this much out because there's people who may understand this stuff much better than me that can go do something with it. Indeed, this tribunal's area of responsibility is not limited to the highest exercise of judicial function, but also includes the duty in the realm of executive governance to exercise vigilance over the correct administration of justice in the community of the church. The Apostolic Signatura carries out certain activities in order to ensure the ecclesiastic tribunals are present in the territory concerned and that their ministry is in line with the proper requirements of speed and simplicity to which the faithful are entitled in the treatment of their cases. Apostolic Signatura. Call your diocese and ask them who the local representative is. Okay, that's it for now. We'll see what comes next. See ya.